It's really interesting how today's video is number 200 and it's the 222nd video that I've done. It's labeled 111 plus. My first series went up to 111 and this one was 111 plus. So 222 total videos with the end game being 333. So the next section beginning next time I share will be number 1 plus plus and continuing all the way to 111 plus plus, resulting in 333, my magical mystical number that's been reoccurring everywhere I look is a 3 or a 33 or a 333. It's unbelievable. And I've heard other people say that upon abiding awakening that numbers become significant and you should pay attention to the ones that keep cropping up. Before abiding awakening, all the way through the transition, non-abiding awakening, transition, 48 seemed to be my numbers. I was born, interesting enough, or not so interesting probably to you, 1948. So this pattern, I find 4 and 8 over and over again. But since awakening, abiding awakening, permanent awakening, I've found that this sequence of threes. And an example, I'll look at the time, it'll be 6:33 or 12:33. Or the most magic one when I wake up in the middle of the night is 333. And I've had others speak of the significance of like 3:40 a.m., how spiritually this is a time that many leave the sleeping state and enter a transitional kind of meditative. It feels to me that the connection, the radio signal, the connection to the above is the most clear, unsullied at that time, 3:33. And some of my best work can be done in this time, in this state of being. So where I've been leading to the end of the year, as 2019 morphed into 2020, we're already into the second month, aren't we? Yeah. But as it morphed, as it became part of... What a morning. This is the third take this morning on the third take of this. First I had kitty problems. Little kitties were making a big noise, the first take. Second take was that the microphone was too close to the vocal cords, so there was a murmuring. You had to get the lavalier mic a certain distance from the vocal cords, which makes sense. So it means, anyway, I won't bother you with the steps involved, but it means backtracking, And the last take this morning was interrupted twice by the mailman delivering packages. So we'll see how we do with this one. So what has been on my mind primarily, as I said, is 2019. Well, 2019 morphs into 2020. It's all been about the nature of the mind. And this is an ongoing project for me, an ongoing process to determine the most useful, the best uses of our mind, of my mind. And the best use is to gather information, sort the information, and gleam it like you harvest wheat, like you shake the husk of the wheat or the rice kernel. And you end up with some useful information. And then the process is refined and sorted some more. So the mind is doing this sorting activity. Now it's sorted. It got rid of the chaff. The chaff, is it? I don't know. But the unnecessary, useless information. The monkey mind stuff. The things of which the monkey mind is made. And the monkey mind is that mind that's constantly jabbering. For most of us in the foreground, as we work, we can bring it back to the background. So it becomes just a noise. And you don't pay it, you don't honor it with much attention, because you know its very nature is useless. Its nature is to preserve the ego. It's to question anything that threatens its existence. The monkey mind questions anything that threatens the existence of the ego. And as the ego, you discard the ego just as the kernel of rice no longer needs the encapsulating shell. You're ready to either plant or you're ready to harvest, with the end game of feeding. Start anyway. It's the beginning of a new cycle, the end of an old cycle, the beginning. You have to get rid of the old to let the new come in. So we've gotten through sort, and the sorting of information to knowledge, and the accumulation of knowledge, the storing, the filing, so that it can be connected or not. It could be random, but somehow connect the dots so that knowledge ultimately blossoms, flowers, and fruits into wisdom. So this work is what I assign the mind to, not the monkey mind, the greater mind. The watching mind, the mind that is constantly watching. Put it to work, and it's very happy to have a job. It's only when it doesn't have a purpose, at least for me, again. Everything, I have to preface here, everything that I say is only through my lenses, through my experiences, and I welcome you to express your experiences in the language that's most appropriate, most meaningful, most useful for you. So, mind is happy. The greater mind is happy because it has a project, and I can always give it jobs. And when I come across some kind of conundrum or something that's problematic in any way, it could be even as mundane as losing something, misplacing something, put my mind to work. Find that, because I'm an orderly sort, and I don't do very well with disorder as far as my personal surroundings. I do quite well with the chaotic, the disorder, that I find myself the greater disorder. But in my little realm, I like to dot my I's and cross my T's. And I have to live with this, because this is just part and parcel of who and what I am. So, remember, my curiosity about the mind, 30 years, closer to 40 years, but 30 years rigorous Zazen, Renzai Zen in the Japanese tradition, which I was introduced in a dojo in Hawaii and continued to go to the mothership in Japan, spending time living the life of a monk. To see if this, but the end game, the be all and end all of what I was seeking was which was most elusive to me in my so-called, my most natural state that I'd experienced at that time, was seeking clarity, because clarity always eluded me. My family name is Hayes, Hayes, but pronounced like haze, Haze, fog, confusion. So I'm aptly named because being in a constant state of confusion is second nature, is my nature. So it's we always want what we don't have. Isn't that ironic? So search for clarity, and was my personal interpretation, being one that didn't really, I would take words from a book or read a book and see if it's applicable, but everything had to go through my lens of usefulness on my level. Was it useful to me? If not useful to me, I would either file it for future use if I valued it. The jets are scrambling, our Air Force, China's acting up, I don't know what they're flying in our boundaries, so the jets are taking off constantly, and that's miles and miles away, but quite disruptive. Anyway, they're playing games with China. We scramble to get up there, and they cross the invisible boundary. Anyway, never mind. That's just to help you about the distraction. So we discard it, or either discard it if we've eliminated it, not as use, or store it for futurely use. So here's the mind: sorting, storing, and storing includes filing. That's some more. Filing is the fine. Maybe I put it in one big category here, and then I take bits and pieces and file it. And then the last thing that the mind has to do is access all this. Won't do you any good if you can't find it. And sometimes I get stuck. But what's come to me is that I will know what I need to know when I need to know it. And if I don't know it, I don't need to know it right then. It'll come to me, usually in my sleeping state or when my mind. I have this mind trained. Now, I've trained it to successfully sort, store, file, and retrieve. But the retrieval system is is less in my control than the first three, the sorting, storing, and filing. It's more of a conscious effort on the mental level. But the retrieval, I just leave it to the hands of God. It's there. And one of the things that was interesting that makes this retrieval process a pretty intricate system is that part of my experience of going from non-abiding awakening to abiding or permanent awakening was the access to everything that can be known, is known, and will be known, and has been known. All simultaneously, all information is available. So everything, that's quite a big storage system that we're talking about, right? Pretty intricate filing. So that retrieval, no wonder it's a little bit convoluted sometimes, that the process, because there's just so much to sort through. But of course, we're working in measurements of time that are almost incalculable. They're infinitely small. So this nature of mind, and again, this seeking for what I didn't have clarity, to be clear, was the pinnacle, the ultimate of my spiritual inquiry. What I wanted primarily from this was to be clear. Clarity. I wanted to be like the reflective surface of a still pond or a mirror, just reflect. Don't project. Just bounce. Hit me and bounce off. And reflect in my daily activities, as I go about my life, the reflection of this man at a state of equanimity. And it was here when I started looking, the things that I did have. Equanimity was present. It took me a while to recognize it, but it also took me a while to see the really value. This is the gift I was given. We don't get all the gifts. The gifts are available, and maybe they will come through time if it's helpful or necessary. Those gifts. So I was seeking clarity, but existing in a state of equanimity. And after I got rid of the striving for the future, the worries of the past, once I became totally immersed in the moment, once I recognized that the moment is all that we have, that is equanimity. That made me available to experience life in all its varieties, its vulgarities, and all of the experiences on an even keel. To react to good, bad, indifferent, the good, the bad, and the ugly on an even keel. And this is quite a gift. But here I am, taking this for granted until I really started learning the value of it. How much it really meant and how much a part of me it was. Still looking for clarity. There was a time in my life that I was looking for bliss. I wanted to be blissed out 24/7 somehow. And at that time, I thought that the transition from non-abiding awakening to abiding awakening is to live in a constant state of bliss. And then, like many things, when it really came to fruition, when I did have this experience, I recognized that bliss was, this is why they say that 90%, the nature of bliss, 90% of the people, when they wake up, they're blissed out, and they can't remain in the physical form. They just immediately leave the shell behind and they're gone to realms unknown, to realms previously unexplored, to realms not even thought of as of possible existence. So 90% just take this route. Now it takes training and talent and luck. Primarily in my point, it was luck that I didn't just succumb to the state of bliss, that I could see the distance. I could see my departure. And I look back and I say, no, there's work to be done in this physical form. It's what Buddha was talking about helping all sentient beings to make their ultimate transformation. And the most help that you can be is to live as an example. To live, to walk, to talk, to interact on the most benign, on the most basic life requirements. Shopping for your breakfast, talking to the mailman, waving to the neighbor. So you become a living example. And this is the greatest gift. This is how humble me can even begin to have any hope to contribute to the progression of fellow sentient beings and life forms, is by being an example. So my Zazen training, the end game was clarity, and what I understood, my limited understanding of something that I'd studied so intently. But because I found outside information other than reading stuff relatively useless, was my own experience of things that helped them to crystallize and be meaningful. So I had to be through my inner lens. My outer lens, my eyes would bring things in, but it's the inner eyes that would decide what to do with it. So my limited understanding was that the purpose of Zen and ultimately the purpose of meditation was to silence your mind with the reward of clarity. Now, I've talked at great length about my misunderstanding about silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's not the absence of anything. Silence, in fact, is the inclusion of everything. It's the inclusion of everything that is. This is the silence, and it's a place. It's not a thing. It's a place. It's a place. It's a place. Where you can dwell. You dwell in silence. It's vibrant. It's alive. It's not the absence of. Again, it's the inclusion of everything. So just as I misunderstood the goal of Zen, the goal of meditation was to silence. And I tell you, I got to the point where I could tame. Now, taming is useful because you need to tame, ultimately, you need to tame the monkey mind. And it just means you relegate it to the back burner and it just becomes like an ambient. It becomes almost white noise. It's there, undeniably there. I haven't ever succeeded in turning it off. But what I have succeeded in is the discipline necessary to separate, to relegate it to the ether, to the background, to the white noise. And from taming came bits and pieces of quiet. I could have a respite, a brief respite, just as I was later to experience brief moments of bliss. They were always a gift. It wasn't through my efforts. Bliss was gifted. Quiet was gifted. But the silence of the absence of sound, the silence of stopping the mind, never happened. And now, so what I had to do is get to the end of the usefulness of this and discard it and say, well, 30 years, so what? Maybe I've got to learn something in that period of time. I'll take the good and let the rest go. Amongst the things I let go was any hope that I could silence in the sense of no noise from the monkey mind. And the monkey mind is in the foreground for most people. In my foreground now is the greater mind, the mind that I'm communicating. It's the watcher. It's the one that's observing. It's the one that I put to work, and that's keeping it busy, keeps it happy, keeps it from becoming worrisome, becoming the seed of discontent. The greater mind can have seeds of. The monkey mind is total discontent, total disconnect. But the greater mind can have seeds of discontent. So it's only because it's not being utilized. It's not being utilized correctly. It's not being utilized fully. So put it to work. That's what I've done. Put it to work. Sorting, storing, filing, and retrieval system. So it's only recently, I'm going to read to you a little bit. I don't do this often, but it's worth it. First of all, I want to read what Adyashanti. Two people that currently I listen to a lot, who are useful, who resonate with me. Different people resonate with different, but I think it's important to have somebody in the physical form. And since I've moved on from my only teacher in the physical form, I've moved on with his blessing and his grace. I've moved on beyond the necessity of having him in my life. Of course, he's always there, but I mean physically, to go to the meetings, to go to his group meditation, to participate in his structure that he created. It served a purpose, and it's no longer useful. But his presence, his grace, his love is always there. But Adyashanti, somebody that I ran across 23 years ago when he was just beginning as his role as a teacher, run across him in Hawaii at a beautiful, meaningful, still remember this meeting with a small group of people and having him talk, enjoying his presence. And more recently, Sadhguru has, I think, from what I can see, he talks about Kriya Yoga, energy yoga, but from what I can see, his journey has been Jnana Yoga, the journey of knowledge. And this is what this Jnana Yoga, of the 4 yogic paths, this is the one that came to me. And I appeal to you to pay attention. Are you devotional, bhakti yoga? Are you the energy, like I previously mentioned, Kriya Yoga, Chi? Are you Karma Yoga, which is the physical yoga? Are you Jnana Yoga, the path of the mind, to discover the proper use of the mind? The nature of mind is what I'm talking about today, the nature of mind. So I wanted to share, only recently, in the last, probably the new year, probably in 2020, this is what's come to me. And I want to start with something about clarity. Clarity will come to you only when you are not contaminated by memory. That's somebody's take on it. I'm not sure where I got that quote from, but it's useful. It's useful. But I found it to be not so. I was not contaminated by memory. That doesn't mean I forgot. It means that I don't let it influence me in a negative way. Don't let it allow it to create negative patterns of thinking, feeling, doing, expressing. But again, the elusive nature of clarity remains. Gift of clarity, brief. So again, category clarity and bliss. Equanimity was gifted. Clarity and bliss just come in small doses. Now, this is what Adya had to say about the mind. If you're trying to stop your mind, you can try for 1,000,000 years, but it's not going to happen. I didn't do 1,000,000 years, but I did 30 plus. Because you are identified with the things that you are not. It's identity. How do you identify? You identify through the ego, or you identify through the spirit? If you take away the wrong identification, you shed the ego. Your mind will be like a mirror, not saying anything, just reflecting everything. So there's the silence, there's the quiet of the mind. It's not saying anything, it's just reflecting. Your mind is here to give you clarity and penetration into life. Create a little distance from the mind. Disengage from the mind. Once you disengage from the mind, you disengage with all identity. Okay, thanks, Adya. And the next, recently this is a brand new addition to my life. There's a soul out there, Amy Berg, and her husband, and they have a webpage. I want to say 0.shamanism.com. I'll check, but Amy Berg, Bergh. I found her initially on Quora. And The questions she was Cora can ask questions. Those that are not familiar with the format. What's it like when you stop thinking in meditation? Amy says, I spent 10 years doing heavy meditation, self-inquiry. There is a misconception about what the purpose of meditation is. It is the misconception that I too had for a long time during the journey. The misconception is that the purpose of meditation is to stop thinking. The purpose is not to stop thinking. The purpose of meditation is to watch the thinking so the mind can digest the mind enough to implode into the infinite truth. Implode, not explode. Implode. Echoing my intuition to go inward. The infinite, implode into the infinite truth, which is your permanent state. The only thing of permanency, after all. Home. This permanent state is home. What happens with meditation that all transient things move into the background of the mind? We talked about moving it from front and center. And she's talking about the monkey mind, where what is permanent moves to the foreground. So all that is becomes the foreground. You begin to move into reality and out of illusion. Yeah, the Maya of ego, the Maya of false identification with everything except what's real. You move out of this conditioned mind and into what created the mind in the first place. All transient things float on a background. Your awareness is that background. If you go long enough with meditation to the personal sense of I will eventually if you go long enough with meditation, the personal sense of I will eventually freeze through itself. All thinking will be absorbed by the permanent background. Thinking does not stop in this space. It is seen through. The mind sees through itself fully. If thinking stops for a time or slows down for a time during meditation, that is only temporary. Thinking always comes back. Most people do not take meditation this far, but those who ache for the full truth can. Well said, ache. That's how I experienced it. It was an ache. Thinking does not stop with meditation. It simply begins to lose its value when compared to the background it floats on. The background is truth, God, non-dual reality, your true self, the all. As awareness becomes more aware of what is transient versus what is permanent, the mind will relax and open up to its natural state. You will find more peace and clarity. This is your origin. That is why meditation becomes addictive. The longer you stay with it, it brings a sense of peace that nothing the mind can conjure up. So don't strive to start thinking during meditation. Don't stop. Just embrace.